So, evening all. You started recording, Stuart, have you?
Let's get on
Yeah. The screen's around. So welcome to Joomla Australia, our virtual user group again. We've been doing these for a year and a bit now, which is working well. I think even though we can all meet back in person in most locations now, the comfort of doing it from home and having international guests is working quite well. So we'll get around to talking about how we do it in group situations going forward. In some other news with Joomla Australia, we're about to start working with Linux Australia to form a formal committee structure underwritten by Linux Australia. That's come about mainly because we had an issue with the .org.au domain rules changing at the end of last year. So now we'll be a registered entity, and we'll have more news on that next month when I've got all that sorted out with the group committee. While we're doing announcements, Brit's just bought her ticket, but if anyone else would like to participate, this weekend is Joomla Day USA. They've got 150 people registered for the weekend. So that's Saturday our time, or Saturday night our time for most of it. And Friday night and Friday morning, there's a couple of activities going on in the background there. So, sorry, I'm just going to, my daughter's calling my wife, who's just leaving the room, so I can get started now. Tonight is a run through of how to get a site to 100 on Google Lighthouse. So has anyone used Google Lighthouse to do performance testing yet?
I have via Speed Metrics, which uses it now.
Right. GT Metrics now uses it as its
basic. That's what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
So that makes, if you were used to GT metrics, all of the metrics have now changed slightly, so the scores are all based around Lighthouse. The reason I started playing with it a couple of weeks ago was that there was a new pull request submitted that needed testing in Joomla 4. And so what you're looking on the screen there is my Joomla 4 test build. And what it basically was doing was changing the way a few things load on the page so that they now load more efficiently in regards to Lighthouse. And so the easiest way to test Lighthouse is to go and open up in Chrome, right click and inspect, and in your inspection tab you'll have a Lighthouse tab, and then generate the report. So to show it can be done, I think we're going to get 199, but we're going to get 3 100s here. There we go. So it looks at a whole range of factors, and on this one, it's very hard to tell what the 1% is. Actually, I can tell what 1% is. So at least one of the images on the page doesn't have an explicit width and height, and some things aren't loading statically. So we lose 1 point there. Accessibility, it tests a whole heap of different things. Joomla 4 is far more accessible. And so all of the audits have passed there because Joomla 4 has been built in a way that at least the Cassiopeia template is set up so that it actually does all of the necessary tagging to make it ARIA compliant. Best practices list, I've passed all the audits there, and we'll see all of these come in with a couple of the tips in a minute. And then SEO, effectively, if your page has a meta description and your page has alt tags on all the images, then you're meeting all of the SEO requirements. So now that you can see it can be done, we'll now see what happens if it's all turned off. So this is my skeleton site, which is basically the base build that I use for all of my upcoming websites. So it's got all of my regular Joomla extensions on there. That's a test I ran earlier, so we'll do a new one because I turned a few things off. So in the last half hour, I've gone back and reverted a lot of things back to default. So it's currently got a Joomla based htaccess file and a couple other things that are not quite as good as they can be. So now the trick's going to be to get it up from 88 and 73 and 87. So we'll see. Actually, I'm going to see what that one is first, because that's, yep, so that's very lazy of me there. Doesn't have a scripted text. I have to find where I put the privacy link there. So, right, so the first thing that I do with it is go to admin tools and use the htaccess maker in admin tools. So if you're using admin tools, then that'll give you the ability to do that and optimize your htaccess file. Jch Optimize is another tool that will modify the htaccess file. You can customize it yourself. I'm not sure if anyone on the screen uses RS Firewall. I'm not sure whether the RS Firewall's got the same sort of feature in there at all. Most of the things that need to be put in are part of the basics in here. Effectively nowadays, I have everything set to yes on the basic security. This last one picks up all the user agents. Protection toggles are all on. We'll add the template in. And I use my sites to monitor my site. So you've got to add the BF network one in there. If you've got other htaccess rules, if you put them in here, it'll add them to the file rather than letting them or needing to manually add them. So if there's domain redirects and things like that, that's where I tend to put them now. Compression. If you're using HTTPS, then turn on these headers and that'll prevent some other types of attacks. And so that's basically all of that turned on. And so save and create your htaccess. And that's now updated the htaccess file with a lot more things. So now if we go back and so looking at getting up from 88, 87, 83. While that's doing that, I've been trying to do the same sort of things here on WordPress sites. Typically, I'm taking a WordPress site from mid-50s to about 80, and for some reason, I can't seem to get them much higher without putting in a whole lot of other plugins. Whereas with Joomla, so far, we're now at 97 just by turning on a better htaccess file.
Oh, could you just run through that htaccess file one time? Just scroll down because I was following it through and you went a little bit quicker on a few.
Yeah,
but really interesting.
My
only question on the whole thing would be the SVG, because I do use SVGs.
Yeah, so what that one's doing is just neutralizing the script. So there's
oh, of course, yes.
Because SVGs are a text file,
yeah,
they can be maliciously attacked and code can be inserted in them. And so this neutralize script execution stops SVG files being used as a payload.
Yeah, I used to have a moving logo, so that would probably stop the movement, but I actually removed that deliberately. But I've been using SVGs for ages.
No, so I think it's slightly different to that. I think it'll still do an animation. I haven't tried it with an animation, but it'll be when there's actual PHP hidden, I believe. So someone can correct me if I'm wrong when they find an SVG that does something else, but I've not gotten into the world of SVGs yet that much.
Yeah, I think it looks for what they call obfuscated code.
Yeah.
in the SVG. So it's either JavaScript or PHP, which can do file injections and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've got all of that done. That's great.
So most of that's the same, and then that allow direct access, including PHP files, to these directories. Putting your template into that spot means that if you've got PHP code in your template folder, which you do, this allows that code to be executed even though you haven't specified it elsewhere. So the template code area falls outside of something else, and that means it makes it basically is just a whitelisting feature. And the same for if you're using My Sites, that's the My Sites plugin location, and that allows that through as well. The line's slightly different in WordPress, but does the same sort of thing. The rest of that was yes, except for so HSTS header is something related to content security policy, I think.
Yep.
And the XST is cross something, scripting something.
Yeah, it stops cross-site scripts, so that, you can't load the CSS and stuff.
So that all, it's more the protection things. The performance thing is based on these expiration dates. So probably the other thing to change there, rather than immediate expiration. So Google Lighthouse is looking for the tags in place to tell the content when to expire. If you're working on a development site, you want it to expire immediately so that when you update your CSS and things like that, the changes refresh automatically. But if you're not making lots of changes, then you can choose a week and a month, or you can just make it a year. So I'll go with that one because the site's getting a bit of love shortly. We'll see if that.
Interesting to see what difference that does.
Yeah, if it does.
Are you using admin tools for WordPress as well, Patrick?
I am now, yeah. And Jch Optimize, which we'll see in a second. So that's gone to 97 there. If we then quickly go, we'll look at the SEO part. So when you go to global configuration, we'll just put in so I'll just save that, and then I'll go to the logo. And that's got an alt tag, so that's all good. Again. So the SEO ones, it goes quite quickly back to 100 when you have all the different things in place. If you've got all things in place, so that the meta description is a 5-pointer. So where have I got that? I have a link to my privacy policy somewhere, but it's hidden somewhere. Right, I'll be coming back to that one later. I know that when I did the test for here, these images needed to have meta descriptions added to them. And Joomla 4 has got a quirky way of doing it now. So when you pick your article image in Joomla 4, there's a alt description field. I should show you this actually. It's so you've got the alt text, but if you wanted to leave that so it was a decorative image, at the moment the way these settings are set up, it won't put an alt tag at all, and that will flag in Joomla to say that there's an error. You need to tick this box to force it to put in a blank alt tag, and that will then put that tag in. So if you're doing SEO testing and accessibility testing, and it tells you that you've got no alt tags, check whether you've turned that on if you don't have a description. But ideally you put a description in if it's not an image that's decorative on the page. So all right, so then the next one that I tend to do to get another few increments there is that I use Jch Optimize. And when we enable that, the latest version's got a few more features that have been put into it. It's got some things now that are still in beta, but start to make very small incremental differences along the way. There's also some things that need to have your server configured so that you've got HTTP2. So you might have to ask your hosting provider for assistance with some of those. So basically, I ramp it right up. So it's using optimum as the compression level. This smart combines a new feature that takes your CSS and works out which parts are common to every page and which parts are individual to each page, and then breaks them into a couple of CSS files. So overall, you end up loading only the CSS you need, but you break it into a couple of parts there. You can be as aggressive as you like with your caching. So I tend to use about a 12-hour cache. And the minification level is how brutal you want to be in how tight it does the minification. Ultra so far has been working for me for everything. And then you've got a couple of options here. You can use PHP URL Rewrite. So this is how it delivers the combined files. Be aware that if you've got static CSS and JavaScript files, that can start to add up. I found that there was a WordPress site that ended up with a 17 gig cache folder after being on for a couple of days with that setting. Heavily used WordPress site, but still wasn't flushing out the code.
Sorry, Patrick, on that one that you've just been looking at,
Yep.
Because I'm fascinated. I recently got this. This is really interesting. But should you not align your cache time with what you were setting in the headers of admin tools, and also with it writing to the HT access? Could it be that depending on which one you last clicked, you'll get a different result? Because they're both writing to the HT access, so they may actually overwrite each other.
Yeah, so you'll see that in a second, because on miscellaneous, it's got this order plugin button. So when you click on that, it forces the plugin order to change to move it down, so it will load in the appropriate sequence. So I'm not sure whether, we can go and have a look in a second, whether it fires this first and then the cache plugin, or whether it fires cache plugin and then Jch Optimize. I think it fires JCH first, and then the cached files are smaller. My theory on that timing there, there's a difference between the cache lifetime and the expiry time for the files, because if you come back to the website again in a month, the expiry will tell you to go and get a new set of files, and the cache will be whatever the cache has done in the last 12 hours and give that to you as the loading time. So the expiry time is more to stop you having to get resources again from the server, if that makes sense.
Right.
So if the cache is telling you get this image, but your computer's already got that image and the expiry hasn't happened, it won't download that image again.
Right.
Okay. looking around for puzzled faces more than might do a caching session later on another night. If you find that JCH is a bit abrupt, you can exclude certain files from compression. And then you can also exclude internal styles. So on an example I'll show you a bit later on the Joomla Australia site, I've had to exclude something because it was loading through the CSS and then wasn't loading. It was like lazy loading something and triggering it. So so that changes that all around. You've got options here to add image attributes, which will add height and width to your images, and that helps with triggering the next parts of the Lighthouse scores as well. And if you've got lots and lots of objects on your page, that creates a large DOM, which is, I don't know what DOM actually stands for, but it's the number of objects that are coming through when you request a web page. By reducing that, that also ticks another box on.
I think it's document object model.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds feasible. Yeah, probably is right. So they don't recommend that you have more than 600 elements on a page, and so this helps to clean that up by effectively stalling some of it. So. This is a new feature that you can optimize Google fonts. So one of the things that shows up in the Lighthouse score is a thing called largest contentful paint. And that is, if you've got something that loads on the page and it then loads a big image and pushes down the page, that is something that impacts on the Lighthouse score. Google fonts do something else where they you'll get that momentary flash of font where it loads a default font and then switches to the actual font. What this does is optimizes how the Google font calls are made, and so then they appear in the right spot at the right time. You can then also optimize your CSS delivery, and this is where I was saying it'll look at what's being loaded on the page and only load what it needs to for that page. And then shift other parts. You can remove unused CSS as well. So we'll turn that on and see how that goes. CSS Sprites I don't tend to use. If you've got lots of tiny images, what this will do is combine them all together into one big image. So you're only doing one request for your images. And then it maps it all out and creates a grid to make into a sprite. HTTP push is another new feature they've put in, and this changes mainly based around a protocol on web servers. So if you find that this doesn't work, it's because your server might not be HTTP2 activated, and so it becomes a redundant feature. I had to go into my server settings because I've got a dedicated server and turn this on myself. How much difference it makes, I'm not sure. Lazy loading, on the other hand, makes a lot of difference. So at the moment, I only just enable it, and what that's going to do is for every image on the page. So for a lot of templates, you used to have to go in and turn on lazy loading, and the template would then use jQuery or JavaScript to go and insert lazy loading. Google now have developed a lazy loading tag that most of the modern browsers use. So if you put, I think it's loading equals lazy, there's an article 2 or 3 months ago in Joomla magazine about how it works. And effectively you can append the lazy tag or the load tag to any image, and that'll automatically make it load lazily. And so what that means is that when your page loads, if it's tagged that, then the image goes and loads last. And the Joomla 4 patch that was made that tested to get 100 on Joomla 4 is based around that, and it uses that tag to load your style sheets and your JavaScript lazily as well, and that's where it pushes the load order down now and scores a bit higher. If you're using a content delivery network like Cloudflare, then you can enable this and use it to shift where your content comes from. This works the same pretty much as the regular Labs CDN plugin does as well. So you probably only need to have one of those. And then optimize images. This has actually got an image optimizing feature built in, so you can go and select images on your website and then click and optimize them. But it also has options to ignore various things. So you, so leave those as they are as defaults, and that should be fine.
Is it using WebP as the image format, Patrick?
I'm not yet.
I've done some recent optimizations while using GT metrics, and have knocked like 200 KB images down to like 5-6 kilobytes when converted to WebP images.
Yep. So Joomla 4's got native. Well, sorry, this is one of the other ones that tested on the weekend. So I downloaded my first WebP image on the weekend to test something that's then gone very pear-shaped in the testing process. It created 4 new issues as part of the the test. None actually to do with the WebP image. It was more so Brian Tiemann added code to allow WebP images to be uploaded to your template folder. But in testing that, I then found all these other sideline glitches with when you try and resize an image, it doesn't do it proportionally. A message was wrong on something else, and some other things that are in there, which have created some discussion, it seems. But yeah, WebP, it's a different algorithm that still uses transparency, I believe.
Yeah. Like I converted some fairly large background images. Didn't notice any drop in quality. So, and they were pretty clear kind of images. And I believe it supports transparency. I haven't converted any that have used that yet, but
I know that transparency was one of the things that needed to be checked on the test I did the other day. So, all right. So let's now see. So now we've got the htaccess file fixed up, and we've got the Jch Optimize turned on, and drum roll. Admittedly, this is a bare bones site that we're looking at, so it's.
Well, I've just been following along with you, and I've taken a 54% performance site, Joomla 3.9 and Utheme Pro template, and at the moment we're looking at 90, 96, 70, and 91. And it's gone to a performance average of 90, whereas it was in the late 50s.
Yeah. So you find that, like, I'm glad that I had the 99, 100, 100, 100 at the start. I haven't gotten many sites to 100 yet. In fact, I had a go on this one today. Sometimes what you'll find is if you're maintaining sites that someone else built, or you're maintaining things that have got certain things that are out of your control, then you might find that it's very hard to get to that next level. So if we look at the one here, so at the moment I can't easily fix the accessibility or the some of the best practice things on the Joomla Australia site without looking a bit more at the template and things like that. So I must have left JCH on. So if we go and so I've just turned JCH off, which is taking it back to sort of where I had it this afternoon. So it's only gone back to 93. This is on Plesk, and there's an issue with a thing called IndexedDB, which I don't know whether Philip, you might be more familiar with.
I use Plesk. I've never seen that.
No, so I'll take that up with.
Never ever had that, and I use Plesk exclusively. So.
Okay. So let's the location of that as well. Oops. I'm doing the reverse here. I'm trying to get it to go lower, which is a.
I'm really impressed with the JCH.
It's come along in the last probably 10 months.
Yeah.
So with JCH off, this one drops back to 85. And then if we turn it back on.
I've been using another one with clients, and this is straight out of the box, getting much higher.
Right.
The mobile version of the
Yeah,
Lighthouse
I'll
test.
one in a second, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm finding that I'm having quite differing results between the mobile version and the desktop. Mobile's a lot harder to tweak.
Yeah, there'll be different things that come up. So, okay, so we're back at 98 there with that one. New report, mobile. And generate report. So it nicely switches to show you that you're on mobile and tell you what you're loading there. There we go, right. So we've got a big issue on this one because we've got 61 there. Now, sometimes running two reports back to back is enough because we've turned on in JCH all of the things about specific CSS loading. It sometimes does a funny thing with the cache in that it needs to make a second copy. We jumped a little bit, but still not much. It's weird. Okay, I'm going to test my one again because it's going to be.
I've just gone and taken again, it was in the 50s and it's now 81 on mobile.
Right.
81, 88, 80, 91,
yeah.
Which is pretty good actually.
Yeah.
For such a small amount of work.
Yeah.
And you're using J4 on it. You're using Joomla 4 on that, aren't you?
No, so this one's J3. So
that's what it says.
What we did there a second ago. Let me run this one on J4 again. Which is interesting that it did that. Okay, so that's gone to 93 for the first So this first contentful paint and the largest contentful paint and the time that takes, they're the two metrics that are sort of the biggest numbers in the process. So as soon as they blow out above, I think it's 1 second, that's when you start having the score plummet. And the Joomla 4 site's not running JCH yet either. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so pretty much Joomla 4 out of the box is fine, really. So with the Joomla Australia site with the mobile view, the problem there is to do with the mostly the amount of JavaScript there. So what we can actually do is go into Test Lighthouse and on because it's not picking that automatically. Actually, let me go to Optimum there. So close. It really all comes down to how optimized you want to have it versus how much damage you can do along the way. So when I first turned JCH on today, this big red graphic is a background image in the CSS, and the way that it changed the loading, it actually stripped that out. So I've excluded that image from being lazy loaded, and that fixed the problem there. At the moment, seeing we've nearly filled the hour, I won't go into too much more. Some of the things that are in the details on these suggestions are really where you need to get that next level of research going to find out how to get around it. So at the moment, I don't know what that Google API call is actually doing. So I've got to go and research what that one is. That's the combined JavaScript from Jch Optimize, and Lighthouse is seeing that that's not actually used. So we've got to weigh that up. There's a YouTube widget API that doesn't fire straight away. It's a lazy load. So I might need to go and add the lazy load to that, and that'll speed that up as well. And it might be that the Jch Optimize needs the same done as well. And then I'm not sure why there's a Google syndication ad code. It may be related to the YouTube player as well. So if I went deeper and then took out the lazy or added lazy load to each of those, or worked out how to remove them, then we might get that speed down as well. The initial response time for the server, that's sometimes hard to improve because that's quite often tied to your hosting provider. I've had I've had servers that have had problems in the past couple of months, and when doing all this a couple of weeks ago, I then went onto the server and tweaked a few more settings and got the load time to collapse, and also went back to the data center and got them to change a few things, and that made marginal improvements that cut down some of the initial response times by another half a second, or even less than that, but that was enough to bring it within the benchmark speed for Lighthouse to measure it.
On that particular issue, because I've had a similar thing recently, and it was all code that I'd written years ago. It was deprecated messages. So it's really worth, if you write your own code and you think, oh, it's only for my own site, going in and just checking the deprecations, because you end up having an awful lot of log files created and with warnings, and it depends on what your setting is. So if on the server you've got it logging everything, that can slow the server down and the response time. So either get rid of the warnings or switch it so that it doesn't record them.
Something else I did to get one of the scores down today, or scores up to date, I should say. So on the Joomla Australia site, there's this news ticker down here, which is hopefully about to load. Or that might be why I had it set slightly lower. So it wasn't putting in an alt tag at all into the module. And so then that was failing on the SEO front. So I created a replace a rule just to add in the alt tag. And that's where I've blocked that red, excluded the red image. If we go back to, so drop that down one level. Don't need that one anymore. And I'll be going back and checking that shortly. So that should load 5 news stories from our Facebook page. And it was earlier today. So that looks to be the only thing that's currently broken. So inspect that console.
Could be you're blocking it with your admin tools now, if you just tighten that.
There's a JavaScript error.
I think it's compressed JavaScript.
Oh, yeah.
Uncut syntax error, missing
Yeah.
parentheses after argument list. So that breaks everything after that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
Probably just need to exclude its JS file.
yeah, I'll need to go and work out which one it is. So that's
I clear the cache.
the time-consuming part. Yeah. Off the moment.
It'll be really interesting to get a vanilla J3 site and a vanilla J4 site and literally just do this straight out of the box on the same server.
Yeah, and it was amazing how noticeable it was on J4 to jump it to those last few things. So I think that started at about 85 before I went and concentrated on each of the incremental parts. And I've got to go back and work out what the 99 is now. So it could be as simple as another pull request has gone back into the nightly build of Joomla 4, and that's then changed something to push it back down by 1 point.
What is your goal then, Patrick? Is it to get 99, 100?
Well, no, so if you're getting green, so green's 90 to 100, then it's that's classed as performing well on Lighthouse. I'm working my way through connecting with different Joomla developer relations people globally. So through GSOC Phillips, dealing with Stephanie Taylor, who's the GSOC coordinator. Luca's apparently been dealing with her as well, Philip, on the Joomla sponsor front there as well. We've also got the contact for the Joomla season of documentation, which is another program they run. And then there's been 2 or 3 other Google people popping up. So they're all, at the moment, developer relations people. which means that we should be able to talk to them and then get introduced to someone that's an expert in Lighthouse. And then from there, really fine tune how it works. Because when you look at the reports and it tells you how to do different things, Lighthouse actually goes and takes you to the Joomla documentation pages on how to fix that stuff. What's both amusing and annoying to me is I know that the documentation needs improvement. So there's some things that are in one or two of the pages that really just need to be rewritten so that not only do they say sort of, so there's one on page caching and it gives you an overview of what caching does, but it doesn't go into the depth that even I've gone into tonight to say, step by step, here are the things that you should consider doing to improve your Lighthouse score on your Joomla site, the way that it's configured, and then go back and do it again a second time to sort out what the mobile issues are. So thanks, Nicola. You've given me a challenge now to come back with a few other ways to make the mobile site happen faster. Again, it's this largest contentful paint that's the main one. So that's the tips in here are saying, where is it? There's a couple in there. The big one was with the way that the page loads, is that it's showing you defer off-screen images. So it may be that the lazy loading is not quite right on the whole site at the moment. So if I inspect that, move that off for a second.
While he's doing that, you ask what the purpose in some ways is. And as someone who runs multiple servers, it's so I don't have to buy another server quite so quick.
Yeah.
Because the more optimized you've got your sites, the more that they're serving static and dumb resources, the less strain on your server. It just makes commercial sense. I can fit a few more sites on and not impact on the performance.
And does it affect the ranking as well with Google? And so
Yeah. So Google, effectively, if Google's telling you this is a good idea, it's so that your site moves up the ranks. So I'm working on a couple of projects with Phil at the moment where we're almost playing a game of challenge each other to who can outdo each other performance-wise. It's one of the features of the process. And so as we get to the stage where we're building the sites, we've got a mixture of 3 and 4 sites, and we're also going to have a mixture of different plugins and technology to do different things. And Lighthouse forms one of the sort of the metrics to make sure that it all happens properly. So just looking at that, those YouTube player images don't have the lazy load because of how they load in the page. So if I was to go and create another replace a rule to lazy load those images, that'll trigger the mobile to load a different score, because so that's the only image, or sorry, the logo and that background image should be the only 2 images that load straight away on the mobile. And then lazy, and then lazy, and then lazy on this image, and lazy on the other. So I'm not sure where that. Is that? Got to look at how they're done, because we haven't put the user group videos up there yet. So So if all those images loaded lazily, then that would be another factor to boost up the mobile version. Go from there. So, yeah. And then all these sponsor images are probably the same as well. Yep, so they're not loading lazily from the module that they're shown with either. So effectively, all of these images down the bottom are trying to load when the page loads, and on mobile, that plummets the score.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Patrick,
Yep.
Just a question we were just looking at. If you load the home page and get a measure, and then go to a separate page and run the same
Yep.
the same thing, you can get varying results. So
Yep.
Obviously you could get 100 on one page, but not necessarily site-wide. Is that correct?
Yeah, so each page gets individually analysed. So it might be that you've optimised your homepage to the nth degree and score 100 on that, but on the other pages on your site, you haven't done your SEO, or you haven't put lazy loading in on images that are in your articles and things like that, and then it starts to fall down. So
You can spend hours on this.
oh, you can spend months on it. Yeah. It's, so this is a good example here. So this is I've installed OS Meta Tags Manager by Joomla Shack on Joomla Australia and all my other sites. So if we did a Lighthouse check on any of these articles that don't have a description, all of these don't have, they're going to have a lower SEO score.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got OS Meta Tags Manager, what this lets you do is articles, article categories, menu items. If you've got K2 installed, and there's a couple other extensions that it works with. It lets you bring up a list of all your articles and then go and systematically put in all of your meta descriptions straight away that are missing, or adjust ones that are already there. And then when you press save, it saves all the meta descriptions back to that content type. And so then you don't have to individually go into each article and to the publishing tab, fill it out and save it and all the rest of it. So your overall performance, so we might have a really good homepage, but at the moment we've got lots and lots and lots of articles that don't have meta descriptions. And so those pages are going to perform worse in Google.
I think it's good protocol to actually put the metadata in articles.
Yeah, it's very good.
If you want them to be searchable. Yeah.
And amazing. I'm amazed that I if you're a WordPress user, and I'll just assume this is just a blanket statement that you would use Yoast SEO to do meta descriptions, because theoretically, and I haven't taken the time to go and just install a vanilla WordPress build and look at the meta descriptions. I've always just been told, it doesn't have it, go and install Yoast. So Yoast does sitemaps and all sorts of other things along the way as well. I find all the Joomla tools are more effective at managing your SEO than any of the WordPress stuff. And even when you install Yoast, it's not clear what it's doing some of the time.
I can say early on that I used to use RSSEO, and I used it in exactly the same way you're doing this. But what I found was when that kind of went downhill, the uncoupling was huge. So at the time, Peter Bowie kind of guided me and said, if it's in the core, then there's no, you're not having to uncouple it. You're not having to do the uncoupling and doubling up. So it's just more going back to best practice.
I stopped using SH404 Ceph when the router got improved in Joomla. So once we got cleaner Ceph URLs without numbers and without extra folder names and all that sort of stuff in it,
Yeah.
It's probably nearly 6 years since I used SH404
Yeah.
but what it had was this sort of feature with the metadata, but it saved it all in its own database. So you had separate metadata from the articles.
And it's really nice seeing it all in one interface like this.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a powerful, that's why most of us gravitate to it, because we can see at a glance what's missing.
That's right. That's right. So,
yeah.
So I've been able to have on some larger sites where they've got a resource called a staff member to do it. I've been able to set them up on this and then just have them go in and punch it all in, and have then found that for blog type content, the uplift in traffic has been small, but it's been noticeable.
Wouldn't it be cool if it could inject it back to core?
Well, no, so this is what this one's doing. So this is saving. So let's do one here, building templates for Joomla.
So will that override your article? No, it won't.
Well, so it's showing what was there. So on this article, it didn't have a description, but now if I click on that.
But if you went to the actual article in Joomla, it wouldn't be there. This is kind of blanketing,
Yeah. So I'll do that.
band-aiding it. Yeah.
So if you go
In a good way.
content articles, open tab.
No, Brent, I think you'll find it actually writes it back to the article.
Yeah,
Does
that's
it? So it
good.
overrides what's in there? Because they never used to do that. So that's awesome.
No.
It
So
does.
this is why I've switched to the Joomla Shack one. If we go,
No, that's cool if it does that.
The progressive web teams also have their SEO one. And I remember speaking to Sandair because years ago, I wrote a plugin which was on top of someone else's work for a client. And what that did was it read your article and looked at the main keywords you used and injected them automatically into your article if you didn't have any. And the same with the description. It took the first paragraph as the meta description and wrote it in if you didn't have any.
Yeah.
So it meant as you went along and saved your articles, they automatically got populated with something that was pretty relevant. And I offered that to them. I don't know if they've written that into it. He was going to at one point, and that would have written it directly into the article if you don't have anything. If you do have something, then you have to click a button to deliberately override it.
Agree. Yeah. Yeah, agree to it. Yeah.
Seems to have made a liar of you there, Patrick.
Never do anything live.
yeah. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
So now what it's telling me is that it's 32 characters too long.
Oh, okay.
Did you say it works with K2 as well?
Yeah.
For those of us with massive K2 legacy sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it does the same thing. So
Yeah, that's good. That's right.
I
have a client who will be happy.
yes. So now that I've saved that,
the other important feature of that, though, Patrick, is being able to specify a different search engine title to the actual page title, which is all straight out of the core. So,
yeah. So
which is the client I'm thinking of. That's their beef. They have ridiculously long titles of their articles because it's a book review website. They'd like to shorten them for search engines.
no, what was I going to do? Went one step too far. So what Nathan's talking about there is
The third column.
if you view one of those, so 10 marketing hacks, it'll come up here with, no, so what's over there?
Your idea.
No, it's loaded it in, it's loaded a preview link. So let's go and find one that we know. Actually, I'll do tonight's one.
It's a preview link as well, mate.
Yeah. better. All right. So if I wanted to change what comes up there from AV Jug April 2021 to
This title is too long.
So title too long and metadata too long.
They're good.
Subjective to Google's recommendations. And the way that those numbers come about is for the search engine result snippet.
I use, because I use, am I muted? I use Yoast for WordPress.
Yeah.
And so if I'm sharing posts between the two sites for different reasons, I'll see what Yoast has to say about the title and has to say about the description, and then I'll copy it across to my and ensure that it works well on the Joomla side.
So the length's being subjective is the title length is the length of that part of the search engine result, and then the snippet length is the length of that part. So so if you're longer than that, then it's just not going to appear on Google cleanly. If it's I had one site where we concentrated on keeping them to the right length, and it made very little difference because what ended up happening was that Google rarely pulled the meta description and typically pulled contextual text out of the article.
Oh, really? Great.
It's showing a completely different, more relatable snippet of text.
Yeah, to the search results.
To the search result, yeah.
Okay.
It's always better to have a meta description, but don't stress too much about length. The other thing is that it doesn't take into account the other settings you've got for your page title. So it's saying 70 characters, but for Joomla Australia, we've then got 6, 7, 9, 15, 16 characters as the prefix to the page title. So that 70 should actually be 54 before you actually get out of the box. So, and that's another thing to look at is for SEO purposes is where you put that meta description along the way. Yeah. Cool. Right. Any other questions anybody's got? I look forward to seeing your tweet about your scores.
I've been looking at my website and I find that I may have to use that replacer because there's some code here. It's complaining about targets which don't have no referrer and what have you, but that's on the template itself. That's not something that I produce.
That was another thing I was looking up earlier this afternoon. So the Joomla Australia site gets hit with that particular external site no referrer.
Yes, that's it exactly.
There's a setting in JCE that you can default to now.
All right, I shall look for that.
But it won't go back and
JCH, yes.
No. So JCE Joomla Content Editor.
All right, yeah.
So you can set Joomla Content Editor to automatically set all of your links when you add a link to default to opening in a new window.
All right, yeah.
If you happen to be, so if I was one of the sites that I'm about to build is a directory of cellar doors for wineries and distilleries and breweries and anything that's got alcohol in it, pretty much. But when it comes to the time that we're making the site, pretty much every URL that we're going to put into an article is going to go back to an external client. So
I know a few UX experts who have a very strong argument with you about whether opening in new windows is good for external links entirely at all.
No, well, that's right. And that's where this recommendation on Lighthouse comes in, is that it tells you to put a no referrer or a no follower rel tag on your link to make that happen. So JCE now apparently has that as a default thing that it will do when you insert a link once it's set or once the version's set. So if you went and edited an article now and put a link in or edited a link that was already there, then JCE, when it reinserts a link, will put the no referrer in.
Even if it's an internal link, or was it?
No, sorry. If it knows that it's a blank.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Blank. Yeah.
And I know that we had that. There was a discussion about that in the magazine team 2 months ago when one of my articles had 25 external links because it was here's where this tip is and here's where this tip is. So they were saying to work out the no referrer, and then I need to go back and see whether because the way we do the workflow for the magazine at the moment is usually a Google Doc and then cut and paste into EasyBlog. It's not formally doing that link trigger, and so I think it misses part of it, or it might have brought it over from Google Docs. But while I keep on submitting articles 2 days before deadline, 2 days before publication, which is actually a day and a half after the deadline that I'm supposed to have, that level of detail is not going to be there. So, and we need to solve it for the magazine so that it's not something that authors have to worry about. It's something that happens during production to get it published and out the door. So, for those that are interested, the April issue was published 15 minutes before we started tonight.
Oh, good.
So, magazine.joomla.org, the new version of Joomla magazine's up. So, with what have I done this? I've done an article this month on Joomla Dashboards, which is a new feature in Joomla 4 that you basically have for components mainly, but there's some main dashboards where you can then add modules. So it's like the quick icons sort of layout on Joomla 3, but it's more flexible and you can put modules anywhere, and you can use, there's a custom HTML module. So you could feasibly write modules up that give instructions to your clients on how to use everything along the way and stuff like that. So yeah, lots of fun and games. So, well, it seems that I've kept you all interested and intrigued tonight. So I hope that it's been.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
The next thing I've got to investigate. So if you're all going to go away and boost your Lighthouse scores, I'm keen to hear whether boosting your Lighthouse scores in turn boosts your traffic and your search engine performance. Go on the way.
That would assume we've all got time to actually analyse and monitor those things.
It's
Every page.
It's a long-term project. When I mentioned that we had this as the topic tonight, Luca, who's the OSM secretary and the editor of the magazine, instantly he's popped up with, oh, that'd be a good topic for a Joomla article for the magazine. So yeah, some follow-up there will be good to get that going. So yeah, cool.
Yeah.
One of the things that irritates me with my clients always irritate, is that they'll often fall sucker for some of these online emails where people are saying, oh, we can do better for your SEO and all that, and they don't speak to you. So actually doing this is actually really useful, because you can then turn around and go, oh, we've done this and this is the score we've got to, and all of that. Because and so what I do is, if I'm ever doing it and I just feel like testing something out, I take a snapshot of the score before I do it, literally as a screenshot, and keep that stored in a little file with the client's website's details on, so that I can then say, well, this is what you were before we did our bit. When did they do their bit, as it were? Because it can be, because a lot of the things they recommend are actually not very useful, but they want to write reports and get paid for it and make you work.
The other thing that I tend to do, so I've only started using raw Lighthouse in this round of testing for Joomla. The GT metrics score lays the results out a bit cleaner. So that gives a nicer, actually let's run that.
Yeah, I've been using that a bit recently, and yeah, it is quite nice. The way it outlines recommendations for fixes as well is quite good.
What about Google Page Speed Insights? Because that's the one that's apparently supposed to be used for the Google's ranking.
So Lighthouse now drives that as the.
But you get quite different results if you use Page Speed Insights, and I wondered whether maybe it was because it's hosted in America or something, and it just takes longer.
Yeah. So we'll get. I know. So it's spotted Sydney on here. So GT Metrics, you can log in and have a free account. If you don't use the free account, it's pulling it from the States. If you do have a free account, there's a Sydney test location, and that dramatically changes that.
Yeah, I use that for GT metrics, but PageSpeed doesn't have anything like that. So
doesn't either. So we're getting an 81 and an 85 there.
So they're all quite inconsistent between the different tools.
Yeah,
it's quite frustrating to try and
pulls in a few extra little things. It used to use YSlow as well as Google PageSpeed, but now pretty much only uses
Lighthouse, yeah.
Lighthouse, yeah. So, but it also gives you, I find it more.
Yeah, I like that.
A cleaner result to work out what different things are.
Yeah, here's your problem. Go fix it.
Yeah, and that's amusing there. So we've got simple jQuery installed on the Joomla Australia site. And what I've done, so one of the warnings I was getting earlier today was that, so Joomla 3 has jQuery 1.12.4 as a default, but that's a very old version of jQuery. So it's actually got some malware flags attached to it. So Lighthouse will tell you to upgrade. So then you can use simple jQuery to load a different version of jQuery onto the site. And I was talking to Olivia Broussard, who wrote that plugin this morning because he's doing something for Joomla Day USA. And I'll go back to him now because I've loaded 3.6 using that, but it's not. It's loading these 3 jQuery files remotely instead of pulling it directly from the website. So because it's using the jQuery and the Google API's CDNs, that means it's pulling those 3 files from the other side of the world, which is much slower than if you served it yourself. So yeah, when you get down to it, there's micro changes that you can make that. So I've got one site now where I'm loading Font Awesome locally from the website, and that shaved another 300 milliseconds off and got me up to an A grade on that particular site. So
I do that on every site with Font Awesome. Never load it from the CDN.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you're using web fonts, is to use the preload tag.
Yep.
To preload them in the head before the DOM loads properly.
Yep.
Patrick, would you, because Nicola's point is really good, would you mind typing in just so they can see one website, flyingwombats.com? So this is something I built about a decade ago, and it's not as relevant now. But your point, Nicola, was really important because it should be HTTPS actually, but it won't force it because I don't have anything in the rules. So, there you go. So basically, this was about 10 years ago the minimum code you could put on a page to pass the 2 W3C certificates. So the only thing it loads is the 2 little boxes saying XHTML1 and CSS with a tick. So you couldn't get less, and yet GT metrics and other search things would give it scores of 80% and things like that. Don't use the CDN, not good enough, use the CGN, blah, blah, blah. And all of it was rubbish. So I get a B, there you go. So you couldn't actually get less on a page. Now, Lighthouse was the first thing that gave me 100% when it first came out. Now it doesn't, and there's things I need to do to make it 100%. But it's literally the smallest amount of code. You cannot get smaller, and yet it,
114 kilobyte CSS file.
Oh, so you haven't minimized that.
yeah, I haven't been.
Oh, wow.
I could take the space out, but you see the point. It is. It really showed up how some of the tests are absolutely talking out there.
And I'm testing it from Australia as well, so that's going to be the other reason it's slow.
Well, of course, the images come from W3C, which would be in America, probably.
It's got to fly to get here, you know.
Yeah.
And then it gets to our NBN.
No, don't set
And it has to.
He had first world problems 2 weeks ago, and 250 megabit per second connection was down for 3 days.
It seems to me that the future of websites might change quite a bit in terms of their functionality. We've gone from quite static, fast sites 10 years ago, or 10 to 5 years ago, and then we started getting all these fancy things with bells and whistles and things that fade and slide and turn and slideshows and all of this. And now we're going back to the point where we're stripping all of that out because fading animations increase page load time, and slideshows have to increase your page load time and all of that. So it's like a return to a fast product again. Is it because it's mobile based and they want it to be quick, or?
Yeah, so mobile first is one area, and then how long do people actually spend on a page watching an animation? If it's not,
It's about advertising. If people, as soon as you get something that starts to load, you lose interest and go off. The advertiser, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, whoever, don't want that. So Google's doing it for its own, it's not doing it for our benefit. It's doing it for the benefit of all the advertising it's got. If your sites are really fast, you'll serve more adverts.
It's crazy that you consider that the bandwidth and everything, even though we gripe about it, has increased dramatically. And so that things should be loading faster, even if they are doing the twirling stuff. But it seems our attention span's gone down, and so we don't want to sit there and wait.
That's not necessarily the case in all parts of the world, though. Developers,
that's true.
Very slow internet, so I think a little bit of it. While I agree it's largely advertising, I think there's a tiny altruistic part which is around being able to deliver content to countries with
Good point.
And your tolerance of a desktop versus a mobile, like if you're on a desktop, you probably actually want to be seeing something at a larger scale anyway. So
things that, they're also really good point, but there's also technology that can help. So let's say you're having a report done on like analytics, and you've got the analytics to load and send stuff back. Well, that takes time for your page to load. So your analytics actually, to tell you how many people are getting bored with your page load, actually costs you people getting bored with your page load. There's technologies like the Beacon API, which came out in 2014 and was installed in Firefox and Chrome in 2017.
Oh dear, Patrick.
Yeah, and Beacon, what it does is really quite clever. It collects your stats and actually only sends it when you switch your browser down. So when you switch to another page, or when you switch your browser off, the browser's already stored it, all your stats, and it then sends it. So you're not doing it in time that you'd be navigating. So it means it never impacts your page load. So there's things like that can really help, which is just clever rather than just doing it the old way. Because you remember the early days of analytics. One of the worst things that things would report is the time that it took to load analytics.
Yeah. For those watching with amusement at the numbers that are coming up in the last couple of tests, there's a specific reason that they're low.
It does deliver some false positives too, Patrick.
Sorry?
It does deliver some false positives due to network connection or whatever. Like I get a weekly report The site that I was running is getting A's, and all of a sudden it got a B minus. I'm like, hey,
Yeah. I know, but what I'm doing at the moment is going to consistently get low scores. The three that just got 41, 25, and 21, I think it was, are all WordPress.
sports.
We need to really shout about this.
Yeah. So, and I can't, so I've been working on GoFish and the Scout site over the last couple of weeks, trying to get them to at least a modicum of performance. This eSand one was a Joomla 2.5 site that they had that was scoring like 80s and 90s. And they've just gone and got someone else and written this one last week. And it's scoring 41, out of the box. So it probably hasn't got any optimization on it whatsoever at the moment, but it's still, that's, without doing something, I've generally got, so I'm trying to think of one that's got nothing done to it. I don't know, this one's got a bit done to it, so. So this is another one that I've run all the things I showed you tonight on. And it was scoring pretty high last time I looked at it. The suspense is, Anecdotally, a bad page speed can equate to thousands of dollars in e-commerce sales. Right, so there you go. That's my next challenge. Is this one is one that I'm about to finish doing some other work on. So I'll take it from 46 to 75 back up to what it needs to be. Instantly looking at that, I've turned off JCH while I was working on it, and it's brought it back down, I would reckon. So, yeah. Anyone that can send me a 100 screenshot, I'll be very happy to know that I've helped you.
Thanks. Set a challenge there, mate.
It is, yeah.
I can do that right now, but it won't be legit.
And I shouldn't tell you this one,
Bit of photo editing.
I'm about to start putting, so on a couple of sites I'm about to build, in the terms and conditions of the website, well down the bottom of the page, there's going to be a clause that says, my anticipation is that nobody ever reads these terms and conditions. So if you're the first person to email this email address, you'll receive a $50 Amazon gift card. And expectation is I should never need to really get around to giving it away.
Right, we're on to that. Thank you.
Hey, Brett, I was already going to.
Yeah, no, it's mine. I'm logging off. I'm going to start working on it now.
We used to, so when we did the chess site, which was big, and we had a big development site, but we launched some software, and they said, "Did you do it on the dev side?" We said, "No, we did it on the live side." And they went, "That's terrible. We need to. Anyone could have seen it." I said, "No, don't worry. We put it in the terms and conditions page." And they're like, "Oh, that's okay."
Controlling terms and conditions now.
So we used to always test new modules in the terms and conditions page. No one.
All right, so I've just turned on the rest of the things that were turned off. So JCH was off on that mirror acrylic site, and now, fingers crossed, we can jump from 46 up to something considerably higher.
Something a bit green.
Something green would be nice. Yeah. Even dark green's nice on GT metrics. So. Hasn't quite liked it because the image has got 87.
There you go. Well done.
Hey.
So that's just turning JCH back on.
Right. I'm going to get JCH for my WordPress site.
So there's some things the free version doesn't do, but there's plenty that the free version does do along the way.
Do you have the pro version?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. I've got that for the Joomla site. So
yeah.
The pro version for WordPress doesn't have quite a lot of the features though.
No, so the WordPress, the Joomla version's 6 point something. The WordPress version's 2 point something at the moment.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's supposed to be coming out a new version, of the WordPress one coming out in a few days. Samuel's putting in a couple of things that I've requested that was already on his to-do list, and that's the WebP format for the optimization of images, and a clear cache button in the top black toolbar. Drives me nuts that you've got to keep going back to the miscellaneous tab to clear the cache.
It's funny you mentioned that. There's actually someone wrote another plugin.
To do that.
To just do that button.
Yeah.
And then because it's not by Samuel, when he's upgraded it, then that plugin doesn't seem to work anymore. So yeah, having a button to click would be much nicer there.
But it doesn't have the auto detect images used on the site feature in the WordPress version either, which is a shame because that's really powerful. Just to be able to tap that, and it just bases it on the main menu structure, and any page that's in the main menu, it will go and see all the images that the page uses and automatically optimize without having to select any folders or any of that stuff. It's awesome.
No, that's good. So yeah, I mean I've shown all my secrets now, so that's effectively how I keep sites optimized.
Sorry, I've just done my Flying Wombats myself, and I'm getting an A with 97.97. So that really shows the difference between
it's those spaces in that CSS file.
What? So it really shows you get a different score depending on what were you getting. Are you getting a B, weren't you? And 30 something.
77 and 98.
97, 97. And the speed is 0.925 of a second.
And that's the interesting thing with the WordPress sites is that the GoFish and the Scouts ones, or the GoFish ones on the same server as all the other sites I've been demonstrating tonight, except for Joomla Australia. And the Scouts one is on its own dedicated server in Sydney. So yeah,
let me try one of those. I'll be interested. So which one do you want me to try?
So do that miracrylic.com, which is the last one I tested.
I can only just read it on your screen. M-I-R. Oh, there you go.
So the interesting part there would be how much lower it is when JCH is turned off, scoring 45. So and that's the other interesting thing, that it was scoring 45 on a Joomla site out of the box, which is still higher than the partially optimized WordPress sites are.
Yeah, I've found the same thing. That the Joomla ones out of the box score better and are much easier to optimize than the WordPress ones.
So if anyone knows how to market that, there's a position going. The elections have reopened again for nominations for the Marketing and Communications Department Coordinator. So if you like that job, let us know. If you'd like to just help on marketing overall, let us know, and we'll get back in touch with you once we've got a department coordinator that can talk to you more.
So I'm getting a D, performance 61, structure 81, first largest contentful paint 2.7 seconds.
So the next way to resolve that
CDN.
international speed issue is to then start looking at Cloudflare and
CDN
to do all that. So
But surely that's not necessary if it's just a little local tradesman site. I mean,
No, it shouldn't be. No.
Yeah.
So
nobody in England's going to want to call them up and get them to fix their taps.
yeah. Anytime, anywhere service.
Yeah.
Yes, he does very good videos or something. Helpful tips.
You really not got the big picture here. You know, we turned our back on Europe. In fact, we only do 1% trade with you, but you're now Australia, New Zealand, the big places that we're going to be courting apart from India. So it might be that we do start importing our taps from Australia.
Oh.
Right.
I'll definitely use a CDN then. Right, well, thanks, Patrick. I'm going to head off now. That was really good.
Thanks, Patrick.
And Colin, I'll talk to you about why your scores just bombed on the one that I've just shared there. So I'm expecting JCH is off, which is why the performance is down. But I know it's on, so I'll fix that for you in a moment, Colin.
Get yourself some more work there. Thanks very much, Patrick.
No problem.
See you later, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye. Good day.
Bye.
Good night.
I'm just trying it as well.
Sorry, I'm just clicking a few buttons, Colin, and we should be able to be clear again.
Yes. Good. Yeah, I've got that recorded. So it should be up by the weekend, I think. It was interesting. I ran my blog site on Lighthouse and got 86, 97, 93, 100 and got a D on a D rating on GT Metrics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because the free version picks Vancouver.
Oh, okay, right.
So it slammed it. So it's quite differing results.
I've just tried it and got the same, virtually the same, an F, but performance was a bit better.
Yeah. There's another little add-on I use occasionally called Woo Rank. Have you used that?
No, I haven't heard that one.
So it's an add-on to Chrome. You get it in the Chrome store, WOO Rank. It has some, again, some differences on the same site, looking at the same sort of measures. So, but you know, it gives a bit more detail on some areas. Right. Well, we might go to the pub. Get something to eat. So
yes, that's the only part that I'm missing from the in-person stuff is the
Flying around.
the usual chit chat. So I think the best we ever did was a session at Pre-Flight, which is Jared's office, and we finished the jug session at 9, and then went across to the pub across the road, and I think there's 5 of us there talking and drinking, and then suddenly worked out, oh shit, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, we should go soon.
yes.
It happens.
It does. Right, well, we're going to sort of think about getting ourselves. The kitchen will be shut and there won't be $15 beer and burger deals. Yeah, well, the last few meetings where we've been an hour ahead, we've struck right in the middle of the busy quiz night crew. So we're actually back on our usual time frame, which is good.
dodged peak hour.
Yes, Jerry. Yes, Jerry. Excellent.
His final number. 46.
What's the issue? It's server response time. Could it be that you just got a lot of demand on the server at the moment?
Yeah, there shouldn't be though.
Worth checking the processes. Could be you've got a bot scanning it or something.
2.27 on the 8 core. So
2.27. That's all right.
there could be a post-dinner rush on buying some tickets or something. But
I'd be delighted if it was a very popular website.
I would be as well. Yeah, so it's not technically the server way we think it is.
Hey, hang on a minute. It's saying here redirect 17 milliseconds.
Oh, yeah, wait a second.
Yeah, it's the wrong URL.
Yes. Console.org.
Hey, Patrick.
If you don't put the HTTPS in, and it's then got to fly the redirect that it'll jump it.
Patrick, I'm going to pause the recording about now so you can
That's right, that's good.
shuffle off. We'll
Yeah,
see you
stop
guys later.